I'm Yusuf Gandhi, and that's Janis. Siegel.
Bucko music, the unifying force. So Yusuf, our very first recording, our first episode, we talked about how we met. And there's a little bit more to say about that. We were introduced by Bob Belden, and then you really came forward and said, I hear the Manhattan Transfer doing the music of Korea. You had a record label at the time, Full Quarters Entertainment, and you had so much faith in us.
I did. Said I listened to everything you guys did, and I said that anything they can do, actually. Remember, I talked about even maybe later on doing something with Sam Cooke.
That's right, the cookbook.
Yes.
Well, that's still a great idea.
Yes.
Yes, because it involves people who started in the gospel world, who went secular.
Yes.
But it was fantastic to really meet you and get to work with you on that project. And that was sort of the beginning of our friendship and time in LA recording, certainly in kind of New York recording, and working, getting Chick involved.
And we had some great musicians playing on it too. Christian McBride, we had ISO, we had, so many other musicians came on.
Yes, we have Lou Marini.
Lou Marini, yes.
We had Fred Hirsch writing.
Fred Hirsch, yes.
For Telling Lies, which was really great. So I'm thrilled to be doing this podcast with you to talk about our great love of music, world music, and how American music in particular has been absorbed into these other cultures.
After our introduction, now we'd like to get back to the meat of what we were talking about, and that's the music.
Episode 2.
Episode 2, our music in America has evolved over the years with the slaves. Of course, originally, I suppose it would have been a lot more classically based music, and the Irish brought in the bluegrass music. Later on, it sort of developed in a way that with the African slaves coming in from all over. And there was blues, there was folk songs that they were singing while they were in the fields. You had the music coming in from different parts of Africa, because as you know, Africa is such a huge, it's a continent in a way, but it was divided. They carved out Africa, and so a lot of music was lost in that way. The traditional music was lost, but they brought their music in, and whatever indigenous instruments they could make for themselves. They played blues, banjos, guitars,
Drums, certainly.
Drums, the cajones, which were actually the Afro-Peruvians made that, so it's a lot of different types of music that came on. They just used whatever they could, but music was there, it was natural to them, and that's what influenced basically music all around the country. So when you heard Balance by Sarah Tavares, and she's from Cape Verde, Cape Verde, the islands which are in the Atlantic, and from where actually the slaves used to be brought to Praia.
To the capital.
It was the capital of Cape Verde, where they were sort of distributed.
Well, Yusuf and I were in Cape Verde. That was an amazing experience.
Yes, and that's where they were like divided and sent to different parts, because this was right in the center of the Atlantic Ocean.
But it was a colony of Portugal, yes?
Yes, it was a colony of Portugal, but it was the Spanish people also came in there to bring the slaves there. So it's a whole different thing, and that's why the music, we started with Sarah Tavares, who's one of the younger musicians, but she epitomizes the crux of that music.
And Cesaria Vor.
Yes, Cesaria was the thing. Cesaria Bau, who's the male equivalent of Cesaria. And, there's so many great musicians there. In fact, the Coladeira, which is very much like the Brazilian Bossa Nova. So when you listen to their music, you realize that there's so much diversity. And in North America, and especially in the US, the slaves, and one of the earlier slaves of the 19th century, he was born in the late 1800s. He was allowed to play piano by his mother's owner. I believe the owner helped him get a scholarship to study piano, and that was Scott Joplin. Scott Joplin, Maple Leaf Rack, of course, was one of his most famous songs. Many of you may know the song The Entertainer, which was in the movie The Sting. So those were his compositions.
It's amazing to hear this music now because you realize that's the beginning of stride piano, beginning of that barrel house style of piano playing that was played in the brothels and cat houses. The house parties became the breeding ground for jazz.
So we listen to music like that, plus the blues, which we will do more of next time. You know, you're talking about Sister Rosetta Tharpe.
Queen of rock and roll.
Yeah, queen of rock and roll in a way. And then other people like Rosetta Johnson, Big Mama Thornton, Ma Rainey, Bessie Smith, as well as what Billie Holiday did. We'll go through all that in our next episodes to show you how they influenced American music. And we'll talk about musicians who influenced American country music as well. From bluegrass, it went right into country and western in a way, what was basically using blues and gospel. And we'll talk about gospel as well. There was another musician who was a very important part of the folk blues. That was Huddie Ledbetter, who was better known as Leadbelly, and he revived some of the old traditional folk tunes which the slaves used to sing while they were.
Now, was he born into a family of slaves? Or?
Yeah, they were all born into slaves at that time, because he was born in 1880.
Basically, American music is built on the text of slavery, which is really a frightening thought.
When I was a little baby, my mother rocked me in the cradle, and I'm old cotton field at home. When I was a little baby, my mother would rock me in the cradle, and I'm old cotton field at home.
He revived Cotton Fields, and then Cotton Fields was sung by everyone from the Beach Boys to Creedence Clearwater Revival to some of the country musicians. There's so many people who've read how
the Weavers.
The Weaver, maybe, I think, I'm not sure, I didn't hear that word.
For some reason, I know it must have been a part of my childhood.
Yes, it was played by so many different players. Plus, Ledbetter wrote Good Night Irene and different songs.
Irene was
House of the Rising Sun.
my parents' courting song. They actually made a record of it somewhere in one of those booths that you could record together. Good Night Irene.
Yeah, then the Rock Island Line, which actually was the song that helped Lonnie Donegan from England. Got the break in America, one of the first British musicians.
Now, he was a skiffle musician.
Yeah,
Can you explain what skiffle music is?
No, skiffle music is basically, in many ways, what we called rockabilly here. Was basically became skiffle there in a way. It was still rock and roll. The beginning of rock and roll, where country and rock or the blues was getting together. And in a way, it was R&B, but it played by the white people. You had Carl Perkins and all of them being rockabilly, as he was. They were great, all good guitar players. When Lonnie Donegan started playing skiffle, he introduced a whole new generation of British musicians into the music. That's when the Beatles, Van Morrison, all of them were influenced by Lonnie Donegan. I remember a quote from George Harrison who said, if there was no Leadbelly, there would not be Lonnie Donegan. And if there was no Lonnie Donegan, there would not be the Beatles. That's what he said once. You can see the influences that African American music brought in.
I did take history of jazz when I was in college with Archie Shepp, believe it or not. So going back to the field hours and the slave songs, really, that's the beginning of it, I think.
Yes, it was.
You know, people trying to keep community and keep connected with their roots, very conversationally singing about their trials and tribulations and joys also. The Leadbelly tune, Cotton Fields, certainly exemplifies that.
A lot of the United States history, as far as cultural history is concerned, comes from the African musicians. They brought
Absolutely, without a doubt.
We'll be talking about a lot of musicians like Fletcher Henderson and all, or W.C. Handy, who tried to make the blues a little more organized.
Jelly Roll Morton.
Jelly Roll Morton, yes. And then you had Duke Ellington, and we just go on to Cap Calloway or whatever. What's happening in the south of America also was coming from there. Latin music was now
through New Orleans, which is really the northernmost city of the Caribbean, as Bob Aubrey would say.
And the Cajun music, which again came from a lot of the African Americans who moved from Quebec to Louisiana. They're singing in French and everything.
It's got that accent.
Yes.
Cajun accent.
Cajun people also took in music from the Native Americans. There's so much of cross-pollination in the way of music.
Well, when you look at American music, you have to look at slavery, unfortunately, and the music that was emitted by these people that were in servitude. That's the roots of pop music, R&B, soul, gospel, everything. That is so wonderful and so revered in the world and so assimilated into other cultures. Going back to the fields, you have to do that in order to understand American music.
Even the gospel music, the choirs comes from Africa. The next episode, we're going to talk about all that. Solomon Linda and the Evening Birds, Zulu tribals, who sang that song called Mbube, which actually means lion. I think Pete Seeger first sang Wimoweh. He called it Wimoweh because that was the lyric.
The lion sleeps tonight.
Lion sleeps at night. And then it became the tokens, La Lion sleeps at night. So
that's where I first heard it.
Yes. They didn't know, they thought it was public domain. And later on, Seeger realized that it was a copyright album.
When I started singing, I was really folk singing is what I was doing. Listening to people, incredible people like the Weavers and Pete Seeger really kept this music alive. And also at the time, in the 60s and early 70s, the McDougal Street in the Village here in New York City had clubs like Folk City and the Gaslight Cafe, and they were featuring what is now called Americana. So you had Sonny Terry and Brownie McGee still performing. They somehow tapped into these artists that were still alive, that were part of the real heritage of America. My group opened for Big Mama Thornton at a run at the Gaslight. It was just a treasure trove of music going up and down McDougal Street and Bleecker Street in those days, Folk City too, and Kenny's Castaways, and of course The Bitter End. So folk music was really how I got into world music, and wondering how many people really know the roots of, say, the Tokens, The Lion Sleep Tonight.
Yes.
That it was originally South African.
It is South African. As I said, Solomon Linda, and he did not, his family did not see any royalties from it till after he died.
Yeah, well, that makes sense.
I think they started getting something because of The Lion King, and that's how it became a little more, known. But for him, actually, he didn't have money for his cancer treatment, and that's how he passed away. And then, of course, his family got it. But, people don't realize, they think that they can use world music without knowing what it means. But it's a great thing that's happening now around the world, that people are being more careful, musicians, like Paul Simon when he uses African music, when he uses song El Condor Pasa.
The Peruvian.
Yes, the Peruvian song, yeah. It's a whole different thing about how music is coming in all over the world, and how musicians are appreciating the music of the world from here as well as from the other way.
But how they integrate it into their own experience, sort of creating a fusion that's a new thing. And that's how music is continually evolving. I think that's how jazz is going to evolve.
And we will go over all that actually in our future sessions about rock music, about Little Richard and how his music was played on black radio, whereas
that whole thing.
And then Pat Boone would do the songs.
Well, Hound Dog.
Leiber and Stoller wrote it for Big Mama Thornton, I think, right?
And kills it.
And then Elvis did it also. And Elvis used to hang out with those guys, so it was a whole different situation.
The British musicians, as I recall, gave big kudos and props to the musicians that they were getting inspired by.
Lead Belly and even B.B. King and Buddy Guy and all of them. They, in fact, I remember the first big Rolling Stones tour. From what I heard, they had B.B. King open for them. So Keith Richards was the one who insisted that Chuck Berry's pianist would be inducted into Rock and Roll Hall of Fame because of his original style of playing rock and rolls. So they always wanted to support them.
Little Richard
Yes.
was an original character.
Yes.
Wow.
Basically, gospel and rock and everything was
But also his persona
Yeah.
and how he dressed and how he looked and his outrageousness was fantastic.
So we're going to, help you listen to all of that also, let you know what you should listen to. And
Music, the Unifying Force playlist.
yeah, because it's very important that you listen.
I would say active listening. You have to really sit down without any other distractions, like we used to do in the old days. Just sit on the couch and listen to music and maybe talk about it with someone, another human perhaps.
And when you like something, then you can read about it. It helps you appreciate it more instead of the other way around.
Well, listening, you're getting the visceral experience in your body. You're maybe dancing, you're moving to it, you're really feeling it. And then, yes, you can engage the intellectual aspect of it by reading.
That helps because sometimes I like to find out who wrote it, what was it about, and what was behind it. As we speak about musicians, we'll talk about lyrics. We'll go all the way from the old days to today to the hip-hop musicians. For example, the song which we play in the beginning, Sarah Tavares' Balance, the younger people who know an artist called J. Cole, had a hit song called Losing My Balance, where the entire backing track is Sarah Tavares' Balance.
I even haven't heard that. And my, Brazilian ensemble, Requinte Trio, recorded Balance. I mean, I flipped out when I heard that song. I did. And in spite of how difficult it was for me to learn, I did.
The next episode after this one is going to continue with Africa.
I think it has.
You've got to go to the rock and roll. You've got to go to country music.
You got to go into R&B. You got
R&B,
soul. You got to go into pop. You got to go into
the gospel, which is such an important part, and even instrumental. The guitar playing Sister Rosetta Tharpe. She's the one who did a lot of guitar techniques that later blues musicians started using.
I don't know why I'm thinking of the Dixie Hummingbirds, but they had a very distinctive guitarist. And my dear departing friend Russell Malone used to know every single introduction on the guitar for all the Dixie Hummingbird tunes. We'll talk about all the gospel groups,
Yes.
certainly.
From Africa, actually, gospel groups, instrumental groups.
Well, you have the Soweto Gospel Choir. There's so much to talk about and listen to. And next episode, we have to continue with Africa.
We should, because there's a lot to continue.
And if you want more information or anything, please go to www.musictheunifyingforce.com and you can write to us, give us suggestions, make comments, and we'll have some links for you and playlists as well.
Back to Sarah and Bomb Feeling. I hope this left you with some good feeling. And please listen to some of the songs that we talked about. It will really help you open your mind to a world of music.
That